would like to go on record as being more willing to sit and talk with Grant and forego the meeting, but apparently that's not going to happen.
We have some experts here tonight.
So let's bring the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District Policy Committee meeting for Thursday, February 23rd to order. A public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee's jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Do we have any such? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
So disappointing.
Will someone note Director Gould's concern? Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Can't answer the movement question, but I'll
Thank you.
propose that.
Do I have a motion? Have a motion and a second. Charlotte, will you call the roll?
Directors Gould,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
Orzali.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So with that, we're moving on to item 4, revisions to current board policies. Chief Wells?
Good evening, directors. Board Clerk Tilson, Chief Inky. As you know, Melissa Maddox, our HR manager, is here with me this evening. And the first one we're going to go over tonight is the workplace harassment policy. That was one that we've been working on, and it was brought through this committee on January 26th. Tonight, we've incorporated all the recommended changes, and tonight it's our recommendation that we would be moving that on to the full board for their final approval. If there's any further discussion on that?
Actually, I have a couple of things I wanted to
Yes.
bring up. If we, looking at the first workplace harassment, and if you look at page 15, this is such a minor point. I just want to bring it up. I don't think it matters much, but under item 11, it says the district shall promptly and impartially investigate any complaints of workplace harassment or retaliation, and will do so. If we were to take the last of that phrase, and will do so in a confidential manner, if we just moved confidential up and said the district shall promptly, confidentially and impartially investigate, we'd save the last part of that sentence.
Good English, too.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gooder. I agree.
That's gooder? All right.
I go with
Okay, so tonight, if we refer this to the full board, I'll just make that addition and present it to the full board.
And, yes, and then with the encouragement of my fellow directors, take a look at page 14, item 9. It says, a hostile work environment is determined by looking at all. I'm wondering if looking is the right word, if considering might not be a more apt description.
Instead of looking at, use the word considering.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, you can get, if you do that, then you need to get rid of the circumstances.
Yes.
Right, Dave?
yes,
Thank you.
definitely.
So just to make sure I got this. So it needs to read, a hostile work environment is determined by consideration of all circumstances?
By considering all of the circumstances, including frequency of the allegations, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And the of the can be deleted. All circumstances, considering all circumstances, including the frequent, you don't have to say of the.
Yeah, you can take of the out. Mm-hmm. And we're all in favor of losing an of the wherever we can.
Okay.
Right, Dave?
Okay.
And then just to protract this one bit more, on page 14, under item 10B, line 1, reporting the perceived violations to the chain of command. The word to, would that not be more accurate to say through the chain of command?
Let's see. Reporting
I'm not
perceived
sure it matters one
violations.
way or the other. I'm just saying that you go through the chain of command.
Well, I think the process goes through, but reporting goes to.
Okay?
Because it might not have to go through the whole chain of command.
Right.
Right, okay.
Chain of
Yeah,
command
that's fine.
is basically looked at as a continuum, and you're reporting to your first chain of command. And then where it goes from there is out of your control.
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay? And that's it for me.
Okay, so this evening I'll just make those recommendations to the full board, and then if they approve it, we'll move on.
And Mr. Chair, I think that really in the presentation, instead of the specifics of each of those, they're really just, more of an English prose kind of thing. There's no substantive change
None.
to the policy. So I think instead of taking the entire board's time to go and this one and just say, at the concurrence of the, policy board, there were minor English or prose changes that have been accomplished with their, and I think the full board will understand that we're not making substantive changes to
Okay.
the document they're reading in front of them. Ofs and thes and ands is not a policy maker or breaker in my mind.
Agree.
Okay, that'll be okay, so with that, we'll just move to the full board on that item.
Matter of course here, do we need to, as a committee, vote on this? I believe we do, because I think we have to vote on this item and vote to move it to the full board. Is
Yes.
that correct?
That is correct. Please do.
Okay, so I'll make the motion with the corrected changes.
We have a motion and a second. Charlotte, will you call the roll?
Director Gould.
Aye.
Pearson.
Aye.
Orzali.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Number 2.
So, looking at the second item,
Yes.
Chief?
Item number 5, we'll be working tonight on the alternative work schedule policy. Again, the HR staff has gone through the existing policy that it's been in place since 1996, about actually February of 1996. And we've gone through, and as we've done in the past, there's a tremendous amount of cleanup, really. Not a lot of substantive changes necessarily. We could go page by page here if you'd like, because there's probably quite a bit of things that we'd address. And then I also want you to know that the 522 has also looked at this point, moving forward, but we'll go ahead and, why don't we start on paginated number 17 in your packet?
Okay.
First page of the alternative work schedule. Comments or thoughts on that?
On the
I-
definitions, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
On the definitions, you lay out some specific schedules. Is there a provision if they are light duty or limited duty, and the doctor says you can return to work, but only 4 hours a day? Is there anything in there as far as what they accrue, what they don't accrue, and?
Well, those would be, well, go ahead.
Just when we're talking about light duty and someone's on a workers' comp injury, once they're released to work, regardless if it's 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours a day, they'll still get their full paycheck. So they wouldn't really, alternative schedule wouldn't really apply to them.
Okay, so they're still getting their holiday pay and everything?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. This is just for, employees that are currently working that aren't on light duty or modified or on leave, just regular scheduled daily employees.
All right.
Non-restricted.
Right.
And modified, and maybe I'll insert a quick clarification. Modified duty is when they are on a non-work related injury, such as like surfing, if you will. You come back and your doctor says, hey, you can come back to work, but only 4 hours. Then the second half of that 4 hours would still be on their own sick leave time. Does that make sense? Versus 4850 time.
Okay.
Are we still on page 17?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just go through my comments on page 17. On 2, definition number 2, at the end of it, it says to a total of 80 hours over a 2-week period. Would it be more appropriate to say maybe 14 days? I mean, I'm just asking, hours or days? Is that help clarify at all for people? Because I noticed that we have, we're not staying consistent necessarily. Like if you look at 4 10-hour days and then a 2-week period. I don't know if that helps clarify for the language or not, but to say consistent and how we identify days, if it's 14 days, it's just a comment. I wondered if that helps or not.
Oh, I think, and Melissa can clear this up for me a little bit, I think that comes right out of the labor code though, doesn't it? Using the term weeks.
I hear what you're saying. I think now that you say that, I think a better way to say that would maybe be over a 2-week pay period.
Okay, there you go.
Because it depends on what the pay period would be
There you
for the different
Right.
things. So we did miss that. I think that would help if clarify.
Okay.
Because some pay periods for some companies are Monday through Sunday, some are Sunday through Saturday.
Right, that's
So-
why I wondered if that's how you were gonna do that piece of it. That follows up then with number 5, 9880 schedule. It says 5 days in 1 calendar week. Is there a different kind of week than a calendar week? I don't understand the term calendar week. What is that? So I just wrote, what does that mean, calendar week? Is that a 5-day business? What does a calendar week mean?
Well, most likely, Director, if I can, it would be on the line of the Mayan.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. I don't know what other kind of a calendar week, so I wanted to add some humor to that.
That was good. That was
I,
right on. That was pretty
or
good.
lunar.
Well, that is the
so-
calendar week of the Aztecs.
All right.
But do you see my point? I don't understand. When we say 5 days in 1 calendar week, what is a calendar week? What is that? So anyway, that's another question I have. And then we'll get back later on. I think you actually have a 6th definition that needs to be added there, and we'll get to that actually 2 pages from now. So
Well, if I
we'll
could
come back
just
to that.
chime in to further muddy that, it would seem to me that it would be pretty easy to quantify that a calendar week represents 7 days, since that's,
Right, which gets back to item number 2, which is how are we going to define this? Either 7 days, 14 days, pay period, how are you going to, so that it's clear, because you now have 2-week pay period, calendar week. There seems to be, we need to have that be, I think, consistent for the reader.
We can make number 5 consistent with number 2 to say, instead of calendar week to say
great.
pay period, or, yeah. I'll have to play with the words, but we'll make them consistent to reflect an actual pay period, depending on what that, with ours, it's Saturday through Sunday. Some places are,
And maybe that's what we put in there. A Sunday, what is it, a Monday through Sunday pay period or something like
and
that?
maybe we can make that one of our definitions, the very first definition of what our actual pay period is.
Right. I think that way everybody understands how you're describing that. That's mine for 17, Mr. Chair.
Chief?
Okay, sorry, I was making let me quick note. Pay period. Okay, so moving on to paginated page 18. Start at the top. Took a lot of information out of there, and we're trying to streamline it. I can tell you right now, there's one on under policy number 1, letter C. It should be a plural, employees with an S probably. Got that on my 15th review.
Good.
And I just want to add, we did take a lot of stuff out of this policy. The original policy was 12 pages long,
Nice.
which is way, way too long for a policy.
And complicated. Mr. Chair, I have one under procedures, number 1. If you come with me to the 2nd sentence, it says, the request must outline the terms and conditions by which the employee agrees to abide and shall be provided. Shall be, it seems pretty strong language. I would think you'd want to put something in there. If the request is deemed not to violate the leave policy. Because as it reads to me, the request must outline the terms and conditions by which the employee agrees to abide and shall be approved. So if I say, I give you my terms and conditions, and I agree to abide by them, the manager shall approve it. And I'm thinking, that's pretty strong language for a manager that really should say, it can be approved if it doesn't violate, because I could then write my terms and conditions, and I agree to do them, and you shall approve it. It kind of almost reads as if we're taking away the opportunity of the manager to say, no, your terms and conditions violate the policy, therefore I'm not going to approve it. I know it's inherent in the document that that's kind of said there, but I think that shall approve is because then you have an employee who says, well, wait a minute, I outlined my terms and conditions and I agree to abide by them, you shall approve it. That's what it says.
I think the context of the shall, though, isn't so much that you have to approve it, it's who the authoritative body is to approve it.
Well,
And it's the division manager is the one that approves it, not maybe.
then if you were to submit that to say, then be submitted
Or,
be submitted, but I think the director raises a great point. When it says shall, I read that as shall.
Okay.
And what I'm simply saying is the request must outline the terms and conditions by which the employee agrees to abide and must comply with the policy and then be, and however else, but the term shall seems to me to take away the opportunity of the division manager to say, there's a violation here and I'm not going to approve it.
I'm going to agree with you on that.
If you were to take out and shall and just say, agrees to abide, and then,
Convey.
it must,
for the
May be
approval of the
approved.
division manager, or somehow get there.
Yeah, submitted for approval to the
Right.
division manager.
That's it for me on 18. It reads actually very nicely with all of that other stuff taken out.
Okay, so we're moving on to paginated 19, next page. Any questions there?
Dave, you got any?
I'm just double checking, making
Nope,
sure
I'm
the
good.
commas are all in the right spot.
Okay, I got one on 7. Page 19, number 7, management reserves the right to temporarily revert to an AAWS, to a regular work schedule, or to a special flexible schedule. New term, not defined. And that's where you go back to number 6 on the definitions. What exactly is a special flexible schedule? Because you're defining in the beginning, regular work, alternative work, flexible, but all of a sudden you use the term special flexible schedule, which is an SP, and what is that, an SFS. So I think we need to define that. And then number 8, does that make sense? No such definition of a special flexible.
Yeah, I think we just meant it to say flexible schedule. So I think we could take out the special.
So is that number 3 in your definitions?
Yes.
Flexible schedule.
Flexible schedule would mean you still work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, but you could work, 6 to 2:30, you could work 8 to 5.
I think, I agree. If you just took special out of there, we'd be
Okay.
done.
I mean, I'll give you a context to that. If you had some sort of a natural disaster and we
Sure.
all of a sudden had logistical support personnel working more of a sustained operation, then they can't have a 4-day work week and we're going to change and they might have to work 10 at night till 6 in the morning.
And that seems to me to get back to exactly as you described, a flexible work schedule. Not a special flexible, not a super duper flexible. It's a flexible work schedule. And that way we're staying consistent to definitions that we're using throughout the document. If you go to number 8, with management approval, employee may flex their schedule within a individual 2-week period. And give me an example where that could, I put it in here, kind of scratch my head. Give me an example.
Let me read it through here one. With management approval, employee may flex their schedule within an individual 2-week work period, to utilize any consent within the time period.
What that means is, if you are signed up for a AWS, say you wanted to switch your Fridays off. I want to work this Friday, but I want to take next Friday off. You can do that, but it has to be in that same 2-week pay period, which makes me think we need to, instead of work period, it needs to be pay period.
Because
But
I was
if
like,
it's-
that opens up to me a whole Pandora's box of when I can pick and choose that.
Well, if I can weigh in here, because on this issue, clearly the employer has to be the qualifying entity that says you can or can't do this.
Right.
I have, however, always thought that, and perhaps this is more along the line of the dinosaur, that the taking it within 2 weeks was almost overly restrictive, and that a 30-day period would be better. And so I would ask HR to consider that, and that's because we had individuals who put a ton of time in because it was needed, and then under the former way things were done, they would say, well, I want to take time off, flex it out because I did this. And they were like, nope, you didn't do it within 2 weeks, you lose it. And so I think there needs to be a happy medium there. The other opposite of that is we don't want people banking 10 or 15 days and then saying, I'm going to go off on vacation. So I would, and I hadn't really weighed in on this, I think something more along the lines of a 30-day gives the manager, that division, a little more flexibility in the employee, depending on what the circumstances are, to catch that up. And clearly, as long as the employer is the final arbiter of whether they can take that off or not.
Well, let me just kind of wade in here, and Melissa will correct me here when I'm wrong. And your point is valid, but there's a difference between the 2-week pay period being part of labor code and how you can pay somebody. And then we could talk about a comp time, which would be the one that you could use outside of that 2-week window. On track? So maybe we need to clean that up somehow. Because I agree with you, we have had a lot of people that have really been working diligently, long hours, and then you tell them, well, and then organizationally, it really doesn't work out, where you say, but you got to make it up in this 2-week period.
Right. And I think that's why I circled this one. Give me an example of how that's helpful for the organization when we ask people to work 18-hour days on occasion and tell them, you better take this within the next 2 weeks or the pay period, or you're going to lose it. That seems like a huge disincentive to really, on occasion like you've done, is require people to work a lot of hours because there's some hot pressing issue. I'm also wondering if in that language that you rewrite, there's something about with prior approval from the manager.
Yeah, I think that my recommendation as management would be that on this issue, HR take it back. Let's restructure it. I noticed under number 8, compensatory time is in there. So I think we could rewire it, perhaps have a senior management discussion on it, and come back with a more highlighted a deal and with more clarity on how we're going to operate it. And that's not to take anything away from staff. They did a phenomenal job on this. That happened to be a stick in the mud for me on that whole issue. I watched a lot of people over my first 14 months here put a lot of time in, and then they were told, you lose it. You're not taking any time off. And I thought that's probably not a good management tool.
Yeah.
And I know as it applies to FLSA, you end up, the comp time issue is in lieu of overtime pay. And so that's always in that 2-week pay period timeline. If they don't use it, it's not so much they lose it, they get paid for it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also concerned that we start developing, which we're trying to reduce, is all these different banks, and then who keeps track of it, and it just gets crazy again. But I think it can be rewritten. You guys go look at what's appropriate, and then we go from there. The final one on page 19 is, I believe that at the end of 10, you start a new sentence, and it seems to me like that needs to be item 11. It's a standalone comment. So number 11 should simply read, denial of an AWS request shall be provided in writing. It's a standalone item. It gets buried in 10, and if you're not careful, you don't read that, and that seems like an incredibly important, comment that, look, If we deny it, you will receive it in writing. That's our commitment to you as an employee who's made the request. And it seemed to me like it got buried in 10, and it was a completely new idea. That concludes my comments on this particular policy, Mr. Chair.
Chief, is there anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. With that, Charlotte, do we need to, we've taken a vote. Is there any action since they're going to take this back? Anything else needs to happen on this item?
No further action is necessary on that. Staff will bring it back to you once more.
Okay. With that, the next meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District's Policy Committee will be March 22nd at 5 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.